Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Having decided to try on the dress her husband had given her, the woman noticed something strange. And when she opened his business trip suitcase, "You really are an amazingly beautiful woman, Sofa." Carlos once again gazed admiringly at her reflection in the mirror, then slowly, as if savoring the moment, turned his eyes to the real thing. Sophia sighed happily, practically bathing in her husband's gaze. And how could Carlos not find her beautiful? Even Sophia herself, who was usually quite skeptical about her appearance, liked what she saw now. And what woman wouldn't look beautiful in such a dress? No matter what they say about practicality, comfort, or emancipation, a dress is still a great feminine power. Almost like magic, whose might, sadly, the modern world has nearly forgotten. If you look around, in our everyday, ordinary life, it's rare to see a woman in a beautiful dress. Yet it is the dress that truly distinguishes a woman from a man, especially considering that all other boundaries between the sexes have practically disappeared. Women have caught up with men in everything, in opportunities and ambitions, in education and drive, in professions and income, even in appearance, if you consider the boyish haircuts, minimalism, unisex style, and the universal worship of jeans. Take their daughters, for example 18-year-old Valeria and her sister Camila, 2 years younger. They were perfect and typical representatives of their generation, or rather, 2 generations, considering how fast the world changes these days. Both were skinny and angular, with figures more boyish than feminine, and, as if deliberately, wore only pants to emphasize that. In fact, the girls didn't look all that different from their cousin Diego, who was the same age as their eldest. When the young folks gathered together, it was sometimes hard to tell who was who at first glance. At least, for Sophia's nearsighted eyes, it wasn't easy to distinguish her nephew's buzzed head from Camila's short, spiky hair. And as for clothing, there was barely any difference between what the girls wore and what the boys did. Sophia had tried to fight her daughter's preference for the universal and utilitarian, something she saw as robbing them of beauty. When they were little, the girls wore adorable dresses, with ribbons in their braids and bows in their ponytails. People used to say they looked like little dolls. But as they grew, instead of blossoming into butterflies, they seemed to turn into caterpillars. Figuratively speaking, of course. Although Valeria's short haircut, which she boldly got in 8th grade, sometimes reminded Sophia of the fuzzy, insect-like creatures they occasionally found in the garden. The effect had been contagious. Camila soon followed her sister's lead and cut off her thick, long hair as well. The only consolation was that the short haircuts really did suit both girls. Camila and Valeria were very similar to each other and to their parents. Carlos and Sophia had always been a striking couple, beautiful each in their own right. Back in her university days, Sophia had even won a Miss University contest, so it was no surprise their daughters had turned out so lovely. Slightly elongated faces with clear skin and faint freckles, large gray eyes, perfectly shaped eyebrows, and cute upturned noses. Oh, what wonderful young women they could have been. No, they were wonderful, of course. But still, a girl in a flowing dress and heels is a sight both lovely and, for their family, sadly out of reach. At least Valeria, who was confidently approaching the end of high school, planned to attend prom in a pantsuit and wouldn't even hear of anything more feminine or fitting for the occasion. Listen, Sofa. Carlos seemed to have read his wife's fleeting thought. What if Valeria sees you looking this beautiful and decides she wants to be, a woman? Sophia shook her head, not believing in such a fairy tale. If she hadn't managed to instill a sense of fashion in them by now, she wasn't about to start. And yet she truly tried to show the girls how beautiful a dress could be. Sometimes, simply wearing the right outfit can change everything. Your back straightens, your head lifts with pride, your legs suddenly look slimmer, and even your thoughts grow more confident and optimistic. And as if in response to this wonderful internal transformation, the world around you shifts too. And this particular dress. Oh, it seemed capable of changing your whole worldview. It was something truly special. Sophia had never had anything like it before. It wasn't just a dress, it was an evening gown, nearly floor length, in a noble inky blue, almost black but not quite. The color was like a very dark night sky. And just as the darkest sky can be lit by stars, the fabric sparkled slightly with silver. Clinging tightly to the upper body in shimmering brocade, embracing its wearer, the material then slid downward to flare out in voluminous, mysterious folds that concealed a dramatic, high slit. Her arms, also wrapped in the same fabric, suddenly felt the soft touch of nearly transparent chiffon brushing against her fingers. The same chiffon gently veiled her shoulders and back like a light mist. In a dress like this, your thoughts became strange and enchanting. You wanted to pout playfully, fan yourself with ostrich feathers, and sit on a sofa awaiting your prince. Feeling like royalty, Sophia stretched her arms and spun in place, then laughed. Yes, Carlos, it's beautiful. Very beautiful. She gave her reflection one last admiring look, not without a bit of pride. All right then, I've admired it. We've had our fun, now I'll take it off, fold it back in the box, and you can put it away, far out of reach. What? Wait, what do you mean? Carlos's eyebrows shot up. What do you mean put it away? You didn't like it? I don't get it, you were glowing just a minute ago. Carlos, what are you saying? Of course I liked it, Sophia smiled. How could anyone not like it? I've never worn anything more beautiful in my life. She gently ran her hands over the fabric. Then why did you say take it away? Carlos asked, astonished. Carlos, are you out of your mind? Sophia even threw up her hands. Where would I wear a dress like this? What would people say? That I've completely lost it? A woman in her mid-40s suddenly playing princess? And besides, I don't even want to know how much this thing cost. That's the last thing you should be worrying about, Soph, Carlos said. The most important thing is that it's your dress. It looks so good on you, so good. It's impossible to even describe how much. He stepped toward her, as if to embrace her, but suddenly stopped short for some reason. Carlos, you've seriously gone crazy. Where am I going to wear this? To a PTA meeting? To the market? Oh wait, I do have that cafe meetup with the girls on Saturday for Lucia's birthday. I can just imagine the sensation I'd cause there. I'll have to make arrangements in advance to shut down traffic in honor of two noble ladies arriving, me and my new dress. Sophia smirked and, truth be told, imagined the look of utter confusion on the staff and guests at the small restaurant if she were to show up like that on an ordinary Friday evening. No, Carlos, it's too luxurious. Even if it suits my figure and age, I simply have nowhere to wear it. It's an absolutely pointless expense. What do you mean, nowhere to wear it? Pointless? Carlos's voice dropped in disappointment. What about our anniversary? Did you really forget that in 6 months we have a wedding anniversary? Unbelievable. And you're the wife. In normal marriages, it's the wife who reminds the forgetful husband of these things, not the other way around. You're planning to celebrate it? Sophia asked, clearly alarmed. She didn't like big events, especially ones centered around herself. Absolutely, Carlos nodded. And not just celebrate, but throw a proper party with guests, gifts, speeches, and flowers. At a beautiful table where you won't be serving or clearing dishes. You'll be walking among the guests, drinking wine, sitting, dancing with me. And you'll be wearing that very dress. And everyone around will be dying of envy. Or laughing at me. Sophia nodded confidently. Carlos, you've definitely gone mad. And I've clearly joined you. I'll have to relearn how to walk in high heels, remember how to do proper makeup, and no way can I do a hairstyle for that dress with just a home blow dryer. So get ready, Vasquez, you're about to spend even more. Beauty demands sacrifice. She suddenly burst into laughter, seeing Carlos's upset and confused face in the mirror. So, you're saying you'll keep the dress? Carlos asked, still uncertain. Oh, Carlos, yes, Sophia replied. It's incredible, it really is. Thank you. Thank me? She added, surprised. Yes, thank you. I'm so happy. It suits you unbelievably well. You're welcome, she said, laughing softly. But tell me please, this dress won't put us in debt, will it? She asked, once more letting her gaze sweep over her reflection with obvious pleasure. If she could just tune out her habitual complaints, her nervous fretting about lost high heel skills, and, most of all, ignore the greedy little voice inside her shrieking about the obvious budget blow, then yes. Sophia was absolutely thrilled. This gorgeous, extraordinary dress was the kind every woman dreams of. And if she doesn't, it's only because she's never seen or tried on anything like it. And it looked amazing on her. Yes, she wasn't young anymore. She often had to pluck out gray hairs from her right eyebrow for some reason, or her roots that never seemed to last until the next color appointment. Fine lines had spread across her face, mocking the miracle creams meant to erase them. But her figure, her pride, had remained just as it was when she'd been crowned Miss University back in her 5th year of studies. There were periods in her life when it seemed like she was doing everything wrong, overeating unhealthy food, lying on the couch for days. And 2 pregnancies don't usually do a woman's body any favors. Quite the opposite. But Sophia had been blessed with a lucky trait. She had a naturally slim build, inherited from her mother and grandmother. That body had somehow weathered every storm and stayed intact. And lately, as if snapping out of a daze, she'd cut back on sweets and bread, drank liters of water, which she didn't even like, and waved her arms and legs each evening under the barking of an online fitness trainer cheered on by her supportive household. But more than anything, it was that blessed genetics, paired with a bit of effort, that gave her this moment, now standing tall, proud, and a little stunned in the mirror. The dress fit like it was made for her, made her look taller and even slimmer, and the structured bodice gave the illusion of something she'd never really had, unlike her slimness. After several minutes of quiet, thoughtful self-reflection, Sophia realized one thing with absolute clarity: no matter what, she was not giving this dress back, even if someone tried to pry it from her by force. "Thank you, my love. It's wonderful." She finally turned to Carlos, smiling as she stretched up to kiss him. "Tell me, what made you even think of buying me a dress? Where did the idea come from? You always kept your distance from clothing stores, especially women's sections. And I had no idea you had such refined taste. And you got the size perfectly, it's like I tried it on myself." "Carlos, what's going on?" she asked, as it finally hit her just how unlike him this purchase was. Carlos was an unusually low-maintenance man when it came to his own needs. Getting him into a store to try something on usually took a serious threat, like having literally nothing to wear to work the next day. All shopping for the girls and for herself, of course, Sophia always did on her own. And she preferred to do it alone, because Carlos was absolutely unbearable during those moments. Whenever he found himself in a store with her, Carlos behaved like the quintessential man, casting dramatic glances at his wife trying something on, then equally dramatic ones at his watch, whining quietly but persistently, and, when scolded, sighing loudly and woefully across the entire mall. He would roll his eyes, looking as if every second spent there was a tragic waste of his precious life. And now suddenly a dress. A woman's dress. An evening gown. Completely out of character. Sophia gave Carlos another skeptical glance and slightly furrowed her brows, surprised by what she saw. His face seemed oddly twisted, as though he were fighting off some inner discomfort, shame, or guilt. Just like the girls used to look in early childhood when caught sneaking candy or smearing lipstick on the walls. But unlike her daughters, who would confess with long, dramatic apologies, this strange expression only briefly flashed across Carlos's face and disappeared. Sophia decided it must have been her imagination. "I just bought it, that's all," Carlos said quietly. "Saw it by chance and thought, wouldn't it look stunning on my Sophia? Then I thought, why not? I'll buy it and she can try it on. And as for the size, well, Soph, who knows your measurements better than I do? Besides, I am an engineer. I know how to estimate dimensions and volumes by eye." Carlos mumbled awkwardly and even blushed a little. But with a stubborn toss of his head, he finished in a more upbeat, joking tone. "Interesting," Sophia said, still examining herself in the mirror. "And where exactly did you just happen to see something like this? At your factory? Vasquez, what exactly are you doing on these so-called business trips, huh? Telling me you're off installing equipment when you're actually sneaking off to fashion shows? Fess up." She stomped her foot in mock outrage and planted her fists on her hips. Carlos coughed, ran his fingers through his hair, and gave her a sheepish smile. And again, just for a moment, Sophia thought she saw something flicker across his face. A shadow of embarrassment? Maybe even fear? She looked at him, puzzled. What is going on with him today? She knew his face like the back of her hand. After all, they'd shared everything for a quarter of a century. Plus a little more if you count their friendship starting in their 5th year at university, when she had dazzled everyone by winning the Miss University contest. It was at that quirky, trendy event which she'd entered only because of a silly bet with her classmates that they'd first met. She looked at him again, but now his face was back to normal. Just Carlos, although a little distant, as if lost in thought. Thoughts that didn't seem to bring him any joy. "Hey, Carlos, can you imagine if I'd had a dress like this back at that university beauty pageant? I don't think a couple of bouquets and a tiara from the dean would have been enough. What do you think?" What? Oh, yeah, you're right about the dean," Carlos said as if surfacing from deep water. "The university really has gone downhill. They still haven't appointed a decent candidate for the dean's position. It's been 2 years of interim substitutes now." Carlos began muttering something unintelligible. "What are you talking about?" Sophia turned toward him. "Interims? What position?" "I was talking about our dean. Professor Martinez, the one from our time. Remember how he gave me first prize? Practically sang about how beauty and brains had never coexisted so perfectly." "Oh, the contest. Right," Carlos said, catching on. "Yeah, what were you saying again?" "You know what, my dear." Sophia finally tore herself away from admiring her reflection and turned fully toward her husband. You're acting really strange today. You're not listening to me at all. And your face. There's something off about it. Don't worry about it. Carlos sighed and waved a hand. Just tired, soft. Night train, you know how that is. And at the plant yesterday, everything went to hell last minute. We were trying to wrap things up, and suddenly people were showing up with unsigned paperwork, questions. We barely made it to the train. Antonio snored all night like a sick elephant. I honestly don't know how I survived till morning. And I've still got to get to the office today, you know? Paperwork, reports, a few urgent calls. So, I've got to run, okay? The door had long since closed behind Carlos. The incredible dress had been returned to its glossy gift box for now, waiting for its new owner to finally toss out that old plaid blazer, the frayed sundresses and tired dresses with loose threads, and make room in the closet for a true masterpiece of tailoring. Sophia went back to her usual chores, but soon abandoned them and reopened the box. That dress. It just kept pulling her toward it. Imagine only a few hours ago, she had been ready to send it back. And now she wanted to wear it again, to feel like she was at a grand ball. Why not? Sophia thought. Why not wear it? The girls had food ready for when they'd come home from school and sports practice. Carlos would be gone for a while. She was alone and needed to feel beautiful again. Like a queen. Let the world wait. She pulled the dress from the box again, savoring the rich, noble weight of the brocade. Then, gently, almost reverently, she closed her eyes and pressed it to her cheek and shuddered. There was a scent. Subtle. Barely there. Almost non-existent. But unmistakably present. It came from the fabric now just centimeters from her face. And it was not hers. It was a strange scent, light, but strong and sharp, with sweet undertones like expensive perfume from some well-known luxury brand. Sophia herself always preferred clean, neutral fragrances, citrus, greenery, nothing heavy. Even if she had somehow transferred a trace of her own perfume while trying on the dress, this was definitely not hers. Earlier, when she was admiring herself, chatting with Carlos, distracted by his odd behavior, she must not have noticed the faint, unfamiliar scent. But now it was obvious, clear as day, and Sophia's nose was always unusually sensitive. What did it mean? Perfume, without a doubt, and clearly women's perfume. Sophia placed the dress back in the box and stared at it, confused. The desire to wear that beautiful gown vanished completely. It had turned from something magical and longed for into something sinister and unsettling. No longer because of its price or its opulence, but because of the mystery wrapped in that faint, undeniably feminine fragrance. Where had Carlos gotten it? And who had worn it before it came to Sophia? This is nonsense. Sophia scolded herself. So there's a smell. So what? Who knows how many people might have tried on that dress in the store before Carlos bought it? Of course, it wasn't exactly pleasant, but hardly a tragedy either. Convincing herself that everything was fine and there was absolutely nothing to worry about, she deliberately started humming her favorite song and threw herself into the evening chores she'd abandoned. But nothing was going right. The potatoes she was boiling for a side dish overcooked, and in the pile of light laundry she'd put in the machine, she found Camila's bright red sock which, of course, had wreaked its havoc. Then, as if on cue, a cup slipped from her fingers and shattered, naturally not some random, disposable mug, but a delicate porcelain one she loved. To top it off, while pouring sugar from a bag into the special container, she didn't notice a hole in the side of the package and ended up covering the floor, countertop, and everything nearby in a generous dusting of sweet granules. After clumsily cleaning up shards of the broken cup and the annoyingly sticky sugar underfoot, Sophia gave up, poured herself a cup of tea, and sat down at the kitchen table with a defeated sigh. What is wrong with me today? Just recently, she'd been in such a good mood. And honestly, there was plenty to feel good about. She'd just received a long-awaited raise at work though. As usual, it came with additional responsibilities. But that wasn't the end of the world. Her older daughter, Valeria, had clearly sensed the school year winding down and finally pulled herself together, catching up in all her lagging subjects. The dreaded C in chemistry that had been haunting her diploma seemed to be backing off. Camila had won yet another field hockey competition. Field hockey. What a strange hobby for a girl. Not that you could say that to Camila's face. Total waste of breath. Carlos had returned from a long business trip and brought her a completely unexpected, stunning gift, one that had done wonders for Sophia's self-esteem. So really plenty of reasons to smile. And yet, here it was. That creeping unease. A kind of sadness had settled over her, as though something inside her stirred and ached, sensing something unpleasant on the horizon. Could it really all be because of the faint trace of perfume on that dress? But that's ridiculous. Even if her nose wasn't mistaken, yes, it was a woman's perfume, so what? That didn't mean Carlos bought the dress not because he wanted to surprise her, but because it no longer fit someone else. And of course, this mysterious someone else must be his lover, right? Because what else could it mean? Silly. Completely absurd. What am I, some aging Lady Macbeth? Jealous over a dress? Sophia smirked at herself, then immediately frowned again. No, it's not about the dress. And it's not about that stupid scent either. It's about the fact that everything in her life isn't as perfect as it seems to others, or even to herself. She had never admitted it out loud, not even to herself, but for some time now she'd felt something was off. Something subtle but constant, like a low hum under the surface. She couldn't define it, not even to herself. But every so often, it was like a chill passed over her attention, a disquiet that hadn't been there before. Like when a sunny day is suddenly overshadowed by a random, fast-moving cloud. The skin crawls, the shoulders hunch instinctively, and your eyes lift to the sky in confusion, scanning for danger. But then the cloud vanishes, the sun returns, and everything is warm and safe again. The shadow gone, forgotten. That's how it felt for Sophia, an inexplicable unease, sharp and unwelcome. And it was clearly connected to Carlos. He had changed lately. That was undeniable. No, he hadn't started staying out late, or drinking, or vanishing with money from the house, or coming home with lipstick on his collar. Of course not. Outwardly, he was the same man down to every little familiar habit. The man who always slept on his right side, slathered mayonnaise on bread, and watched random evening TV shows without much discrimination. He was, as always, calm and steady, mildly sarcastic, attentive, and pleasantly pedantic in his opinions. He still joked about his little women's kingdom, as he called their household of Sophia, 2 daughters, and Sophia's mother, who frequently came to stay. And, by the way, he and her mother had always gotten along wonderfully, proving wrong all the stereotypes about difficult mother-in-law and son-in-law relationships. Carmen Rodriguez affectionately called him Carlitos and often joked that she'd disown her stubborn daughter in favor of her cherished son-in-law. Carlos genuinely respected and loved the woman who had taken them in when they were newlyweds and hadn't yet found their own home. He worked hard, traveled often in his role as a field engineer specializing in complex machinery, ate everything Sophia cooked with gratitude, talked about vacations that had remained only theoretical for years, and forgot to put his dirty laundry in the basket. Everything seemed normal, and yet, something had shifted. Carlos had changed, subtly and almost imperceptibly, just like that faint perfume on the dress. Feeling her thoughts veering into the wrong territory again, Sophia shook her head and stood up. Enough. Time to distract myself. Stop thinking about all this nonsense and do something useful. For instance, she could unpack Carlos's suitcase from his trip, the one he'd, as usual, left in the middle of the hallway. He normally unpacked himself because he was embarrassed by his habit of stuffing things in at the last minute, mixing up socks with paperwork, charger cables with toiletries, and shirts with notes, numbers, and random bits of hardware. But right now, Sophia needed a task, something to focus on, and that suitcase was the perfect target for her energy. She flipped open the lid inside. As expected, it was the usual mess: clean clothes, not so clean clothes, paperwork, the ever-present tangle of cords, instant coffee sachets, packs of wet wipes, several open ones, for some reason, and even, wrapped in plastic, a pair of small metal rods, clearly parts of some mechanical device. She quickly pulled out the larger items, shaking the small stuff back into the suitcase. And then, as she yanked one more dirty shirt by the sleeve, she heard a distinct metallic jingle. Running her hand over the shirt, she immediately found the source of the sound in the chest pocket. It was a set of 2 keys on a ring. 2 ordinary keys, the kind that open ordinary locks and ordinary doors, who knows where. They lay in Sophia's palm, and she stared at them, feeling a strange weakness spread through her. No, this is unbearable. I'm turning into a real hysteric, she thought angrily. So there are some keys in Carlos's suitcase. So what? Soph, you know what kind of world I dream about? Her husband's voice rang in her head. A world without keys. They're my personal curse. Keys. Honestly, I should just wear them on a string around my neck like a first grader. And that was true. Carlos constantly lost his keys, and with such enthusiasm and consistency that he eventually stopped carrying them altogether. He always left the house earlier and came home later than everyone else, and everywhere else, he just didn't need them. So what were these? She examined them again. They were standard, generic. Millions of locks are opened with keys just like these. They did look like apartment keys, especially with the little metal keychain dangling from the ring, a small silver bunny, its enamel surface gleaming faintly, smiling sweetly with an exaggerated cartoonish face. A bunny. Sophia genuinely tried, but could not for the life of her imagine Carlos even if, by some miracle, he had started using keys again, say, for an office, ever attaching something like that to them. Being a smart and reasonable woman, Sophia could, of course, come up with at least a dozen explanations for why those keys were in her husband's suitcase. Or at least that's what she told herself at first. For example, maybe they weren't his keys at all. Maybe he just found them. Maybe Antonio Mendez, his usual travel companion, whom Carlos always called Antonio with that weary tone, lamenting the man's tendency to snore like a foghorn no matter the surroundings. Maybe he had lost them, and Carlos just picked them up and forgot to return them. Although, honestly, that theory didn't hold much water. Not really. Sophia set the keyring on the table, and a sick, creeping sensation washed over her. It was like something cold and knotted had been hiding deep inside her and was now slowly beginning to uncoil, slithering through her, threatening to reach her heart. Enough. This has to stop. Carlos would be home in a couple of hours. She'd simply ask him about the keys, the same keys that now seemed capable of making her hate innocent little cartoon bunnies for the rest of her life. And really, this was all a mistake. She never should have started this. After all, it was his stuff. Let him deal with it himself. She reached decisively for the suitcase lid, then froze. From the side pocket, a corner of a photograph peeked out. A woman's hairstyle. Dark, voluminous hair. No one in a naturally blonde household had hair that color. And the very presence of a photo in Carlos's suitcase, a woman's photo, was somehow more shocking than the strange, inexplicable keys. Sophia suddenly felt weak. Finally, as if steeling herself, she reached out and pulled the small card free. It was a picture of a young woman. She was laughing brightly into the camera, showing perfectly straight white teeth, which made her whole face seem even more radiant. She was beautiful with symmetrical, proportional features, long dark wavy hair, and large expressive eyes. Sophia held the photo delicately by the corners, as if afraid to get burned or leave fingerprints. She flipped it over and, moving her lips like a child sounding out syllables, read the message written in Carlos's handwriting. My Anita. Well, that was it. That was the answer. And the end, too. Even with her imagination, Sophia couldn't come up with a scenario where this photo had been given to Carlos as a token of appreciation from some grateful female factory owner whose equipment he had installed. Carefully, as if the paper might cut her, Sophia slipped the photo back into the pocket. Then she tossed in the keys, shoved everything else she'd taken out back into the suitcase, and slammed the lid shut, flinching at the sound. The soft click of the plastic cover closing sounded like a massive stone slab slamming down, sealing her off from her old life, from the past, her familiar feelings and thoughts, her dreams and hopes, her family, and most of all from him, from Carlos. She turned off the lights, curled up on the kitchen bench, and went completely still. Sophia Morales was beautiful, not cute or pretty like hundreds of young female students, but truly beautiful, striking and unforgettable. She knew it, she saw how people reacted, and she enjoyed the attention that green-eyed blondes with long legs and elegant figures tend to attract. But for some reason, Sophia had never wanted to be a model or actress. She didn't feel called to the first, and didn't believe she had the talent for the second. Fine by me, she used to joke, showing remarkable humor and good sense for someone so young. I'll be a beautiful lawyer. After all, looks do count in the legal world. And she did go to law school. You're such an idiot, her friend and classmate once scolded, dropping by for a visit. Sitting here with your nose in a book? Finals are next week. You could stand to dust off a few books yourself, Sophia replied with a sly smile. If they kick you out for failing, Isabel, what will you do then? Oh, I definitely won't be wasting my time on textbooks. Isabel squinted playfully and held up the tip of her pinky. If I had even a third of your beauty, hell, a quarter, I'd know exactly how to use it instead of ruining my eyesight. Sophia would just laugh and wave off such comments. She studied hard, enjoyed the attention from the boys, but didn't show much interest in anyone herself. And then came the beauty contest, Miss University. Morales, I'm asking you seriously, on behalf of the dean's office, no less. Her academic advisor was saying, you're clearly the top contender. Honestly, the only real candidate in the entire class, if we're being honest. Why are you laughing, Morales? He cried, offended, then suddenly burst out laughing himself. Sophia, come on, help us out here, will you? Can you imagine? A beauty contest and not a single actual beauty competing? You're just scared, said unstoppable Isabel after listening to Sophia's teasing. Bet you won't do it. You'll chicken out. Okay, how about this? If you enter the contest and win, I swear I'll ace the next round of exams. Isabel's vow was so out of character and absurd that Sophia shook on it immediately. Her mother, surprised by her daughter's unusual decision, somehow dug up a long, elegant dress, and Sophia stepped out onto the stage of the university's assembly hall. And promptly tripped. Nearly fell. In the front row, a young man was watching her intently, unblinking. Sophia, like any beautiful woman, was used to stares, shy glances, sneaky looks, or bold, brazen stares, and she had long since learned to ignore them all. But this gaze was different. It burned, yet was shy. It admired her, yet apologized. It was curious, captivated, and unsettling. She raised her head proudly and smiled dazzlingly, sincerely, and just for him. And he understood. You're an incredible woman. I know people must tell you that every day, probably more than once, he said to her after the contest, which she naturally won. He stood in front of her, holding a bouquet of roses, smiling shyly and nervously. It was strange because this unexpected admirer was, in fact, very attractive himself. You don't need to come up with anything clever, she said, to her own surprise. Just, let's go somewhere. Sit down. I'm exhausted and starving. They ended up at a little cafe. Sophia was devouring a giant pizza completely incompatible in size and calorie count with her newly earned beauty queen title, while Carlos looked at her with glowing eyes. And then came the years. Many years, spent side by side with Carlos. Some good, some not so good. Some serene, and others where she genuinely questioned whether she was sharing her life with the right man. But bad spells always ended. She always found herself happy again. And now, her happiness had ended. The photograph and the keys were a final, ugly blot at the end of the sentence. It was a strange sensation, like she was watching herself from outside, wondering what Sophia would do next. Would she cry? Scream? Smoke a cigarette for the first time in her life? Smash a window with a stool? Oh, she could put on that new, magnificent dress still carrying someone else's perfume and greet her beloved husband in it, just to slap him across the face. Sophia, I'm home. Carlos's voice rang out from the hallway, so familiar, so dear, and pulled her out of her thoughts. You wouldn't believe how exhausted I am. Honestly, it's been insane at work. Feels like I was gone for 2 years, not 2 weeks. Sophia, why are you sitting in the dark? Did something happen? Tell me, Carlos. She said quietly, will your Anita be coming to our anniversary celebration too? And of course, she thought, she'll lock the door behind her with the bunny keychain. And now, let's see, will he blush, pale, stutter, and lie? Carlos did, in fact, pale so dramatically that she got scared for him. But he said nothing. He swallowed hard and sat across from her. Sophia, my love, it's not what you think. Not at all. He finally said, closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and continued. I should have told you everything a long time ago. I had to, but I couldn't bring myself to. I was afraid, soft, because I knew this would be the end. You'll never forgive me. My life is going to fall apart, but I deserve it. I really do. So, here goes. Please listen. Carlos Vasquez was born into a happy, stable, and loving family. He was a long-awaited child. Naturally, he was declared the most wonderful baby in the world and showered with attention and care. From the very beginning, Carlitos was spoiled thoroughly and persistently. His mother, his aunt, and both grandmothers poured endless love and affection on the pretty, clever, and lively little boy. His father, determined to rescue his son from the clutches of the women in the family, periodically tried to take charge of the boy's upbringing. As soon as Carlos turned 10, his father enrolled him in sports. He started dragging Carlitos off to fishing trips, hikes, and the family dacha, not to lounge in a hammock and eat berries, but to do man's work, chopping firewood for the sauna, fixing the leaning fence, washing the car. Carlos quickly realized that being dad's son was a lot harder than being mom's little boy, though it was far more interesting. He was smart, very smart, and quickly learned how to balance between the different expectations of his parents. With his father, he felt strong, brave, capable, maybe not of everything, but certainly of far more than most boys his age. It cost him freedom and brought heavy responsibility, but he carried it well. With his mother and the other doting women of the household, he basked in warmth and indulgence. Thanks to this dual-style upbringing, Carlos didn't grow up spoiled or entitled. He became a strong, well-built young man with a sharp mind and an unshakable belief that things in his life would always go his way. Maybe not instantly, maybe not perfectly, but eventually and mostly. Because he, Carlos Vasquez, deserved it, more than anyone, and no one had the right to challenge that. So it came as a complete shock to him when, at 16, that belief was shattered. And what's more shocking, it was shattered by a girl. Her name was Elena. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, and the strangest part was how perfectly her appearance matched her character. Usually, in schools and youth groups, the leader role belongs to the bold, the striking, the tall, the ones who stand out. Everyone looks at them, drawn by their charisma. Respect follows soon after. Carlos had believed in that his whole life. He had always been first in line, the tallest, the strongest, thanks to years of swimming and his father's discipline. On top of that, he had the classic leader look. His face had clean features, thick eyebrows, gray eyes, and well-defined lips. His soft blonde hair fell into his face just enough to add to the charm. He didn't have any of the typical teenage awkwardness: no big ears, no giant nose, no protruding Adam's apple, no acne. And he knew the power of his light fringe. Early on, he refused to go to the barber unless he absolutely had to. Only once his hair was so long that he started to resemble a very pretty girl, prompting his father to threaten to braid it and send him to school like that. Soon, the girls at school were old enough to realize what a good-looking guy Carlos Vasquez was, and once they noticed that all that beauty sat atop broad shoulders, was dressed in expensive jeans, got top grades, was an athlete, and about to get a moped from his parents, they accepted his leadership status without question. The boys had accepted it long ago. To them, Carlos Vasquez was just the guy. Sure, sometimes they wanted to punch him in the face just to disrupt his perfect symmetry and knock the arrogance down a peg. But that was only natural. But he could hit back hard. Besides, Vasquez really was a good student, but he never acted superior and often helped out less successful classmates during tests. By the time they reached their final years of school, Carlos Vasquez was the undisputed informal leader among his peers, unanimously considered the most handsome guy by the girls, and had earned genuine respect from the teachers. The first day of the new school year in 10th grade began as usual. After the summer break, the students greeted each other enthusiastically, slapped backs, exchanged news, and were already mourning the inevitable tests the merciless teachers were about to unleash upon them. Carlos was catching the usual admiring and sometimes downright starry-eyed looks from the girls. He had just come back from a seaside trip a few days earlier and had a deep tan. Against his golden skin, his sun-bleached, even lighter hair and white teeth looked especially striking. He happily answered questions, told stories about his summer trip to the south, and just as casually embellished them here and there. No one in the room knew much about the geography he was referencing anyway. Everyone listened, sighing in awe and envy, while Carlos, tossing back his famous fringe with practiced flair, basked in the recognition he'd sorely missed over the summer. "What nonsense," came a quiet voice out of nowhere. Carlos froze and turned toward the sound. A completely unfamiliar girl was smirking at him sarcastically. In the excitement of reuniting with his classmates, he hadn't even noticed her. She sat at a desk, looking around curiously, clearly listening in on Carlos's monologue. "Excuse me?" Carlos asked, confused. "I said, nonsense. You're lying, and not very well at that. Why do you think everyone around you is dumber than you?" She replied bluntly. "There's no way you could have been on that shore and seen Turkey across the water. That's a totally different coast and a totally different strait. Sure, from there you can see it, but not across the whole sea, unless your eyes are telescopes capable of spanning 800 kilometers. "What?" Carlos repeated, feeling uncharacteristically foolish. He looked around in confusion. "Exactly," she smirked again. "Lie better next time." He was saved by the arrival of their homeroom teacher, who entered the classroom just in time. "Who is she?" Carlos grumbled to his deskmate, sitting down under her mocking gaze. He didn't have to wait long for an answer. The teacher announced, "Class, meet Elena Herrera, a new student transferring from another school." The new girl stood and gave the room a slight nod. That's when Carlos first really looked at her and saw the glaring mismatch between her appearance and her behavior. There was nothing special about her. In fact, she was pretty far from attractive. Slender, but with overly long, thin arms and legs, a huge mouth, and round eyes, she reminded him, oddly enough, of an oversized frog. Her hair, pulled back into a tight, slick ponytail, did nothing to help her appearance either. With looks like that, Carlos thought, she should have been quietly sitting in the corner, keeping her head down and staying out of sight, especially when normal people were talking. but she clearly didn't share that opinion. On the contrary, from the first days, the new girl set out to claim territory and establish dominance. And by the end of the first quarter, Carlos, much to his astonishment, found that Elena's advances had reached the borders of his own kingdom. First, she turned out to be a know-it-all and quickly proved she was now the top student in the class and soon, in the whole grade. Then it emerged that, despite her plain looks, she had a sports background that made Carlos's modest third-class swimming rank look like nothing. No joke, his friend whispered, eyes wide. She used to play volleyball, was trying out for the youth national team, or maybe it was the girls' team, whatever. Doesn't matter. Point is, she almost made the cut. Then she got injured, had to leave. So now she's here. Still badass though. What's so badass about that? Carlos snapped back. I could understand if she still had a future in sports, but now? What are you all clucking around her for? Just some washed-up has-been. Right, has-been. Sure, his friend smirked. If you're so tough, go say that to her face. We'll see who's the loser then. Even in height, the new girl had him beat by a few centimeters, sure, but still. But what really infuriated him was her personality. Bold, combative, never at a loss for words, she didn't hesitate to challenge anyone or anything when she felt she was right. She had no fear, no sense of deference to authority. And apparently, she had zero insecurities about her appearance. She grinned wide and easy with that big mouth, tied her hair back with a rubber band, and clearly couldn't care less about matching her hairdo, nails, or makeup to anything. While the other girls obsessed over every curl and lip gloss, Elena didn't bother. Carlos had no intention of giving up his leadership or status, especially to some girl who'd just shown up out of nowhere. So, despite that initial slap to the ego on her first day, he decided to fight. But Elena Herrera was simply out of his league. She was quicker, wittier, more sarcastic, and above all, smarter. After high school, they lost track of each other. For a while. Then, one day, they ran into each other on the street. Vasquez? Is that you? Came a surprised voice behind him. He turned. A stunning, dark-haired young woman stood before him, with a breathtaking figure and legs that could have graced a runway. Where were his eyes when they were in school? Elena? You've changed so much, he said in awe. You look amazing. And you haven't changed at all, she laughed. Still the same handsome devil. They chatted for hours over coffee, laughing and reminiscing about their school years and their complicated relationship. You really gave me a hard time back then, Carlos chuckled, shaking his head. You were such a terror. Yeah, well, it wasn't exactly an easy time, Elena smiled sadly. I'd been in sports forever, since I was 7. My whole life was training, tournaments, traveling with the team. Even school was just a team. That was my world. And then it was all gone. I didn't get kicked out or anything, I just had to leave. Life happened. That injury. Volleyball is all jumping. I jumped too much. And then suddenly I was in this void. I had no idea how to live outside that bubble. And then what? Carlos asked when she fell silent. Then, I heard you. That nonsense you were spouting about seeing Turkey across the Black Sea Strait, she laughed. But for some reason, in that moment, I calmed down. I can't explain it. I just thought, look at these people, they live normal lives. They breathe, they study, they lie to each other. Like this pretty boy here. Somehow, it made me feel normal. You saved me, Carlos. You didn't even know it. To be honest, I kind of fell for you, she added with a laugh. Carlos and Elena started dating. They felt good together. Elena's love, let's be honest, greatly flattered Carlos's ego. Everything seemed to fall into place again. He was once more the best, even in the eyes of the strong and defiant girl who had once seriously disrupted his school life. Now, of course, she had turned into a beautiful young woman. But that only made his victory all the sweeter. Carlos, listen. I don't even know how to say this. Elena, usually so bold and confident, suddenly hesitated and blushed. Then, all at once, she smiled brightly and openly. We're going to have a baby. I don't even know how it happened, but it's wonderful. Carlos, my love. Yes, it was early and unexpected, but still. She stopped short. Carlos was silent. His silence was heavy and angry. What's so damn wonderful about that? He finally said, his voice sharp and cold. Are you crazy? I don't want a baby. Not now. Get rid of it. Elena looked at him, clenched her jaw as she had done all her life, and pushed him out of her apartment. And so Carlos Vasquez, smart, proud, handsome, seemingly a real man in everyone's eyes, including his own, turned out to be a coward and a scoundrel. He left his hometown to live, study, and work elsewhere. Years later, he met a girl, or rather, saw her on stage during a silly university contest. She was stunningly beautiful. He couldn't take his eyes off her. She smiled back at him. He married Sophia. Soon after, Valeria and Camila were born. He worked hard, loved his girls both big and small, and might have been completely happy if it weren't for the constant guilt fused with his heart. Years later, he returned to his hometown on a business trip and ran into Elena by chance. They recognized each other immediately. She had barely changed. "Hi, Vasquez," she said simply, as if they'd seen each other just yesterday at school. "Hello, Elena," he replied. "Please talk to me. Just talk." They sat at a cafe, but the conversation wouldn't come. "Mom, why aren't you answering your phone?" A worried voice called above them. A tall, gray-eyed young woman with long, slightly wavy hair stopped beside their table. "Mom?" Carlos said in disbelief, turning to look at Elena and then back at the girl. She looked at him, surprised, blinking her large gray eyes. His eyes. Sophia and Carlos now sat in silence. The girls, who had long since returned home, peeked into the kitchen, but seeing the strange expressions on their parents' faces, quietly closed the door again. From behind it came impatient, nervous sighs. "So you've been lying to me our entire life together," Sophia said at last. "You have a grown daughter. A very grown daughter. You sure started early, Vasquez." "No, Sophia, no," Carlos whispered desperately. "I've been lying to myself my whole life, telling myself I'm a decent, honest man. I've only been lying to you for the last 3 years. I swear, I didn't know Anna existed before then. I had no idea Elena kept the baby. I was so scared back then. How could I have known she'd be that brave, that strong?" "I don't know what to say to you," Sophia said after a long pause. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I have no idea if I'll ever be able to understand. Or forgive you. I don't know. But for now, I need you to leave. I need to be alone and think. Or at least try to." Carlos stood up and left. The next day, the doorbell rang. "Hello, Sophia," said the dark-haired, gray-eyed young woman standing in the doorway, hesitating slightly. "I'm sorry, I don't know your middle name." "I'm Anna, your husband's daughter." She said it and seemed to listen to the words herself. Then, perhaps realizing how absurd that phrase sounded, she suddenly burst into laughter, loud, warm, and sincere. For the second time in 24 hours, Sophia sat and listened to the story of her husband's life, the man she had known so long, who suddenly felt like a stranger, full of secrets. "I never had a father," Anna said. "And then, 3 years ago he showed up. Out of nowhere. To be honest, at first I didn't even want to deal with him. I thought I didn't need him. But we took that journey together. It was long and difficult. And you know what I realized, in the end? That forgiveness, true forgiveness, is one of the purest and most freeing feelings there is. Really. You know, Sophia, if even my mother and I forgave that screw-up of a dad, then you kind of have to. I mean, seriously, he hurt us way more than he ever hurt you. Don't you think?" I don't know," Sophia said slowly. "Maybe you're right, Anna. But I truly have no idea what to say to him. How to start. Where to begin. It's so hard. So strange. To live with someone for 20 years and suddenly realize he's not exactly who you thought." She fell silent, tangled in her thoughts and emotions. "Oh, come on, Sophia," Anna waved a hand. "He's exactly who you've always known these past 20 years. And as for what to say, maybe you don't need to say anything at all. I'm sure he'll understand. He loves you. You know what?" Anna suddenly stood up, clearly struck by an idea. "I've got it. Sophia, just put on the dress. That dress, the one he brought you, the one I helped him choose. Just put it on. It'll say everything for you."
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.